Hi Sean, nice to see you again.
Well, we had a long chat about your time in the Teletubbies before, and that was brilliant. But I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it, compared to all the other things you've been in?
I have done quite a few things, yeah. The thing of note, I can't remember whether we talked about it when last time we spoke. The thing that the highest profile thing is being in two episodes of The Last Kingdom on Netflix.
Oh, yeah, I saw those. I thought it was you, actually. I had to check on Internet Movie Database to make
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. That was quite interesting. If you wanted to talk about the sort of chaotic, haphazard way that these things happen, that was actually in the lockdown,
All
and
right.
the program was shot in Budapest.
Mhm.
And I deliberately stranded myself in Budapest during the lockdown so I could be with my Hungarian ex-wife and my two daughters, more my
Right.
two daughters than the Hungarian ex-wife. Well, ironically, I couldn't stand the whole situation of being married, and yet in the lockdowns, I was there with them 24 hours a day, and it was one of the happiest times of my life,
All right.
which is quite ironic. And I think of their lives too. But the different countries have different rules about travel and quarantine and what have you.
Hmm.
And the Hungarian government had a thing where if you went outside the country, you had to be in quarantine for 2 weeks and you weren't allowed off the property.
Right.
And they would send police round to check. And they were so efficient that once, when I arrived at the airport, by the time I'd done the 20-minute drive to home, the
Mhm.
police car was there waiting for me.
Wow.
And that happened to another person I knew as well.
Mhm.
So they were really hot on making sure that you obeyed the quarantine rules. You had to put a sticker on your door
Right.
saying quarantine, like a sort of a plague sticker on the front door.
Right.
And if you broke the rule, you could be deported
Right.
because, I'm not a Hungarian citizen. I've got Hungarian residency, but I don't have citizenship.
Right.
So it was quite high stakes. So I had arrived from Britain and I was in the house in Budapest in quarantine. I used to go running around the garden every day, round and round. And I had a phone call from the casting director saying that the director's interested in you doing this part in the Last Kingdom. Can you come in and do an audition? And
Hmm.
I said, well, I can't because I'm in quarantine. And they said, well, this is Hungary. It's up to you. So I got my ex-wife to drive me to the casting studio in the center of Budapest. They knew that I was limited with time. Sorry, that was a Facebook message arriving. And I went in, signed all the forms in Hungarian as quickly as possible, did the casting in front of the camera,
Hmm.
and then had got alerted my ex-wife to draw up outside the front door. I ran out, got in the car. We drove as fast as it was possible without triggering speed cameras back home. We went in. I went in, and about 2 seconds after I sat down on the sofa, there was a knock at the door, and it was the police checking that I was
That's close.
there. So those were the circumstances in which I got the job.
Hmm. I read the books, the Last Kingdom.
Bernard Cornwall.
Yeah, excellent books. Yeah, I'm glad they made it into a series. Were you familiar with the source material before you started filming?
No, no, it was just a filming job. I've
Yeah,
read a Bernard Cornwell book called Sea Lord, which I really enjoyed,
I've read
which is
that as well.
about
Yeah.
a bloke who's an aristocrat, but he doesn't bother about being an aristocrat, and he lives on a yacht and sails around, and then obviously gets involved with various international criminals and spies. But no, I haven't read any of those things. To be honest, I haven't really watched any more than the actual bits I was in
All
of the
right.
Last Kingdom, because for me, I like to be in hot, sunny places, and I like cloudless blue skies. Obviously, I
Hmm.
like to drink water and wash in water as well. So I know that one needs rain, but I'm not really into dank, dismal, dark, wintry places.
Hmm.
And every winter, every time it's European winter, if I can, I go and work abroad in Southeast Asia and do stand up over there just to escape the misery of the detested European winter. Um, So it for me, it's visually, it's just dark and dreary and depressing. All the
Yeah,
mist, everything. I can't get beyond that. I'd
yeah.
rather see a spaghetti western or something, shot in Andalusia. You know,
Well, tell us
it's
about the filming. How
dead.
long did the filming take? Because it was over 2 episodes, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a few days. I think it was maybe 4 days, and it
Hmm.
was filmed in this place in rural Hungary. We got bussed out there,
Hmm.
and they built a medieval York, or even in fact before medieval York, but they'd recreated ancient York in the
Right.
middle of the Hungarian countryside. And so when you were inside a castle or whatever, you actually were inside. It was all done. Because obviously now they've got smaller cameras and sound equipment and stuff, so you can actually film in more enclosed spaces than they used to be able to.
Yeah.
But the funny thing was that it came out in conversation. I think maybe I knew someone in the wardrobe department who I'd worked with before or something. But the person in the wardrobe told other people about my Tinky Winky past. And so I was in my trailer, sitting in costume, waiting to be called on set, and there was a knock at the door, and
Hmm.
it was two of the main stars of the series knocking on my door saying, "We heard that you were Tinky Winky. Can we have a selfie with you?" And it was completely the wrong way round because I was just like a lowly bit part actor, and they were the stars.
Hmm.
And I also, one of them's wife was pregnant with their first child, and he asked
Hmm.
me to sign a Tinky Winky photo in Tinky Winky's handwriting to give to the baby. But
Right.
he had to tell me the name of the baby, and he said we're keeping the name of the baby secret. We've not told anybody what the baby's name is going to be, but they told me so I could write the baby's name on the photo I was signing for him. And then strangely, there's actually like a fan group for The Last Kingdom,
Hmm.
and they interviewed, I think he's called Mickey somebody. He actually applied for my Facebook friendship, one of the stars, Mickey something. One of them I think was Danish, and one of them was Icelandic.
Hmm.
Anyway, he was being interviewed about what was the craziest thing that happened to you when you were filming, and obviously he was there for years. And he gave as the example, he said, finding out that this guy I was going to cut his head off, that he actually was the former Tinky Winky. And there's
Well,
actually talk of going to one of those conventions in
yeah.
Florida, yeah, which is weird because I mean I was only in 2 episodes and I wasn't even a big character.
Well, you've done a lot of work with Harry Hill as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done loads of work with Harry. I knew Harry when he was starting out. He was
Hmm.
actually in a double act called The Hall Brothers, which he writes about in his autobiography.
Yeah.
So we worked together on the circuit, and then when he became more successful, he had his first ever TV series was called Harry Hill's Fruit Fancies, and he got his old mates to be in it. Jobs for the
Yeah.
boys. It's nice of him, and I played various parts in that. And then he used to use me as a stooge in his live tours and on TV Burp and so on. And it usually involved me having to attack him, sometimes in human form and sometimes in animal form. And we'd then have a fight. And he'd normally obviously win the fight, which is fair enough. He was paying. But because I've been a student of Aikido, the Japanese martial art, for many years.
Hmm.
So because of my skill and ability in not hurting somebody, I was able to use that. So that was a big plus point for me in doing those things. Because I could sort of we could make it look like it was a real spectacular fight, but actually I would be holding back and making sure I didn't hurt him. Don't damage the talent, as they say.
Was it normally done in one take then?
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, were the fight scenes normally done in one take?
In TV Burp, they often were because TV Burp, they had to get it filmed. They
Yeah.
had a studio audience sitting there, and they didn't want to get them to get restless. So
Hmm.
usually they would be done in one take. Sometimes it would be in a pre-record, and then the fight bit. Oh, the first time they had a few fight things, it was me.
Hmm.
And then later on, I think as sort of equity lost its power and also they just got more in the swing of it, they
Hmm.
realized that all they needed to do was grab a runner or a third assistant director or whatever and stick them in a costume and get them to run on.
Well, you're friends with Van Elton, aren't you? And you were in his film Maybe Baby.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I actually played two parts in Maybe Baby
Mm.
because I played Dave the comedian, which is a part he wrote for me specially, and then I noticed that there was another character called Mrs. Furblob, which was a costume role, and
Right.
I said, "Oh, who's doing that?" And they said, "Oh, we're getting someone." And I said, "Well, I could do that." Then I got myself another day's filming, playing Mrs. Furblob as well as Dave the comedian. And I was, of course, in a scene with Hugh Laurie, who's now massive.
Yeah. Yeah. He's done well in America, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's done very well with House, I think,
Uh-huh.
which I've
Yeah.
never seen. But apparently, it's a very famous thing that actors talk about. There's a clip that it's on YouTube. His audition piece for House is on YouTube, and actors talk about it as an example of how when you're not that bothered about getting a part is when you get it, and if you've really put your heart and soul into the audition, you don't get it. And
Mm.
there's apparently, I've never seen it, but there's this video of Hugh Laurie doing his initial audition for House in a very sort of, I don't really care type way.
Mm.
But he actually used to study Aikido as well.
Oh, right. I didn't know.
Yeah, because when they drove us to the actual set from
Mm.
the sort of unit base, I was put in Hugh Laurie's limo with him. So we
Right.
sat back seat of a big Mercedes and had a chat. I've met him a few times apart from that socially as well.
Ah, right. I lived in America for a while, and I introduced them to Blackadder, especially Series Three, which obviously
Mm.
is the Prince Regent in there, and um, and they couldn't believe it was the same guy because obviously it's a completely different character to House, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, he has an American accent, I think, in house, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ah, okay. Yeah, I was looking through your Internet Movie database the other day.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been updated since I last saw it. Loads of films you've been in as well, like really big Hollywood films.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I was contacted by these blokes who had a podcast in Bolivia or
Hmm,
Peru or somewhere.
right.
And they wanted to interview me, so we did this interview, and then they started telling me, say, asking me questions about things that I was listed in as doing in IMDb. And I had to say, I'm really sorry, but I never put that in, and I don't think that was me. Some
Ah,
of the
okay.
things. But other things I've done aren't on there because
Right.
it's really complicated. Like if you want to put a credit, I mean, there's quite a few things I've done that I haven't actually even attempted to. Because if you want to put a credit in IMDb,
Hmm,
the process is incredibly complex, and the
right.
actual, entering information on the screen and the IMDb program, it's almost incomprehensible unless you've got a PhD in computer science.
Right. Okay.
And I've actually tried it and just given up and thought, well, this is just too complex. I don't know how to do this. I
Hmm.
mean, obviously, I'm not very good anyway at that sort of thing. And when I have got entries that I've put in, I've actually had to get a more intelligent friend to put them in for me. So it's ironic that there are things which I haven't done which are on there, and things I have done that aren't on there. But
Right. Okay.
try me, fire away, and see whether it was me.
Yeah. Okay. Because I suppose there's quite a few Dave Thompsons in the world, isn't there? So American Psycho.
I don't think that was me.
Okay.
Sorry about
Perfect
that.
Storm.
No, that wasn't me.
Get Carter.
No, I mean I was a little boy when that was made, unless there was
No,
a
I think it
remake.
was a remake. The
All
remake.
right. But I think, you see, I'm in equity, and
Yeah.
there's only allowed one name per actor, so there's only
Oh, I
one Dave
see.
Thompson in
Yeah.
equity in the UK. But there might be other Dave Thompsons in America or something. I think
Yeah.
it's Dave Thompson who used to work for the BBC, because in fact he was a producer on Maybe Baby. So
Ah,
you actually see Dave Thompson as a producer and Dave Thompson as me.
right.
Credits of Maybe Baby, and it's two different Dave Thompsons in just in one.
Okay, so Charlie's Angels.
That wasn't me. No,
Okay.
sorry
Um,
about this. I'm going to cancel the interview. It's been a
um,
terrible misunderstanding.
the Bourne Identity.
Um, I don't, I don't think that was me. No, say that again.
The Bourne Identity.
Don't think so. I've done some little American things, you see, in
Yeah.
Hungary. But I don't think I've done that. I did the one like the John Wick one that was the sequel to John Wick.
Oh, you're in that, right?
But it's the one that's trying to remember what it's called now. The Continental. It was a mini series, and
All
it's
right.
I think it's like the prequel to the John Wick film. So it's John Wick when he was a kid.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it. I never really watch stuff I'm in because I'm just too busy. I just don't get the time. But I did watch the clip because I paid this bloke to do a show reel, and
Hmm.
he was looking for me in the Continental, and they cut my close-up shot. It was really annoying. So I played. The part was called Crazy Screaming Guy,
Hmm.
but in IMDb it's been reduced to Screaming Guy,
Right.
and it's when I think John Wick's a kid and his mother is putting him and his sister in the boot of a car, and it's in New York in the 50s. And I'm like this sort of tramp, homeless, alcoholic guy wandering around to give it a bit of atmosphere of menace. And I wander past them, and they cut my blooming close-up shot. But the strange thing was that I improvised the lines of this alcoholic homeless guy wandering around in a demented, angry way.
Hmm.
And I improvised those, and they kept those in. So
Oh.
in the scene, you can hear my voice saying stuff that I'm actually improvising, and then at the end of the scene, it like my voice sort of echoes, and that's the end of the scene, which is quite ironic that that was just I did it at the time, I improvised it in
Hmm.
front of the camera, and they actually used that, but then they went and cut out my close-up shot. But
What's
that's
the?
show business.
It is indeed. What's the weirdest role you've ever had? Do you think, besides Tinkie Winkie, obviously?
Oh, goodness, I'd have to think about that really. Um, I suppose, um, I mean, in Harry Hill's tour Sausage Time, I played a bloke from Dignitas trying to kill him
Right.
and attacked him on the stage. It's in the live DVD, and
Right.
we have a fight, a big fight on the stage where I'm trying to kill him, smother him with a pillow. And that was quite weird. Um, I played an Egyptian mummy in one of his things.
Hmm.
Otherwise, oh, I know there was another one in a film called I Want Candy, starring Carmen Electra,
Hmm.
which was again, it's very frustrating, but sometimes you do something and then you don't end up in the final cut. No, it would have been called you end up being on the cutting room floor, but
Hmm.
nowadays I think it's just deleted from the hard drive.
Yeah.
And I played. There's a scene where the two main characters put a video in a video player, a VHS video, and it's a porn video. And it shows the beginning of the porn video, which is a pizza delivery guy knocking on, ringing a doorbell, and a sexy young lady in a skimpy little, lace nightie answers the front door, and he's and obviously you can see, you can tell, you can see what's going to happen. And so I did that. I played that part, pizza delivery guy, and they even had the bit where they go in the house, and things start to happen, and it got cut from the film.
Oh.
And at the time, this was in the days when HMV was still in departure lounges at airports and
Hmm.
things were on DVD, and I could still afford to go to Goa every January for holiday when I was still married. And we went to Gatwick to fly to Goa, and I went in the HMV. I bought the DVD for I Want Candy, starring Carmen Electra. And then when we got to the hotel in Goa, I put it in when laptops had DVD players in them, to watch the deleted scenes. Because I thought, well, being the deleted scenes,
Hmm.
no, didn't even make the deleted scenes. It's a
Oh,
shame,
right.
because I thought I was very good in that, but the whole,
Yeah.
yeah.
I used to work in computer games, and I realized when you sort of realize your career's going down the pan a little bit. So there's only so many lines in the credits that they could fit in,
Yeah.
and mine just got knocked off the end of the credits by the producer's dog. It was
Oh my goodness.
Eddie the Wonder Beagle got in just in front of me.
Mm.
So yeah, so it happens.
Well, I've been in things where there's a dog in the scene,
Hmm.
and the dog is being paid more than I am.
Really.
Yeah, got a better agent.
Better agent, right? What's the strangest audition you've ever had to go to?
Goodness,
What's,
that will be another difficult one to remember, actually. Been to so many auditions. Oh,
yeah,
there's one that I did, which was for, I think this, I've never seen the film, but it's called Infinity Pool.
right.
And I auditioned for the part in that. And
Mm,
again, I haven't seen the film, but the part I auditioned for was a violent criminal gangster who's in his villa
mm,
somewhere near the Mediterranean. It was filmed in Croatia apparently, so probably it was near the Adriatic, but I don't know where it was actually set. But the audition I had to do was I was this criminal guy having sex with an underage girl from behind in my villa.
right.
Then someone bursts in with a gun and puts a gun to my head. And I had to improvise with the casting director three ways. We did it three times, three ways. One, that I'm such an aggressive, violent man. I'm not in the slightest bit afraid or phased.
Mm,
Two, I'm so out of my head on alcohol and cocaine and other drugs that I don't really know what's going on. And three, I'm a complete wimp and I'm sort of pleading and begging for mercy.
mm,
When I was doing the first one, the sort of the hard man who's
mm.
not afraid, are we allowed to swear in this?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Well, the casting director's holding this prop gun to my head, and I'm just going, you fucking cunt! I'm gonna fucking hunt you down. I'm gonna fucking kill you, and gonna get an electric iron, and I'm gonna burn your fucking cock and balls off
Right.
with the electric iron. So we finished the whole thing, the whole audition, and then the casting director then said, "An electric iron, you say?" And I didn't get the part,
Ah,
but that's what I would like to play. If the world went my way, I would like
mm,
to play a violent criminal gangster, preferably the boss, in some sort of film that catches the public imagination and becomes a sort of a cult classic.
mm,
Like in my opinion, one of the best performances ever in anything. Ben Kingsley in Sexy Beast.
mm,
You ever seen
mm.
that when he plays that
Yeah,
actor? That the acting is just superb, especially when you know what Ben Kingsley's like. What he looks like as an ordinary person and how his manner and his speech and everything are. The acting in that is just out of this world.
mm. Right. So let's think about the industry. So it's obviously you've been in the industry for quite a long time now, haven't you? So
Mm.
do you think things have got better or worse over time?
Well, I think probably they've got worse.
Yeah.
I expect probably most people think, especially old people, probably think things have got
Yeah.
worse. But there's much, much, much less money sloshing around.
Mm,
Definitely. And technology has just revolutionized the whole business. It's revolutionized the music industry and
mm,
it's revolutionized the screen industry. I mean, mostly the internet. The internet, obviously, it's given the common man a voice.
mm.
A
Yeah.
teenager can use their iPhone and do their own broadcasting from their bedroom
Mm,
and become a multimillionaire. So, you know, I mean, what's to complain about that? That's a leveler, isn't it? That's where they've taken it out of the hands of the elite and they've put it in the hands of the ordinary people when that can happen.
yeah.
So I'm not sort of complaining or criticizing. I'm just observing how
Yeah.
things have gone. But because of the internet, where a teenager can become a multimillionaire with their iPhone, by doing YouTube and TikTok, it means that people are spending time on the internet rather than watching a telly in their room.
Mm,
And so, because the viewing figures have gone down massively, the advertising revenues have gone down massively, which means the budgets have gone down massively.
yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think this is a secret. I don't think he minded me telling you, but like Ben Elton, for example, he wrote that sitcom Upstart Crow,
Mm,
which was critically very well received. It had very good ratings. I don't know how many series it ran for, but they didn't commission another one after they'd done the last one, despite the fact it had, David, what you call it in it, David Mitchell.
Mitchell. Yeah.
It was very, very, very successful sitcom. But they didn't have the money, I think, to do another series, and that's why he did the play. He wrote a West End play called the Upstart Crow, and he put
Yeah.
that in West End, which ran very, very successfully for quite a long time. Um, so there's the guy, he's Ben Elton. His track record, I mean, it would be hard to beat, wouldn't it? As
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
writer, and just as a writer alone, he's written so many things. The Young Ones, Blackadder. He co-wrote, all
Mm.
its in Blue Line. He's done so much, but he can't get a sitcom on the BBC, even though it's already proven itself as a successful sitcom. They're not commissioning it. And then he did that. It was either Friday Live or Saturday Night Live. I can't remember what they called it, but he did a one-off for Channel 4,
Mm.
where it was again very successful, and it won a BAFTA. And he obviously would like to have done a series of Friday Night Live or Saturday Night Live, depending on the night of the week it was on.
Yeah.
Channel 4 said, we haven't got any money. Sorry, we don't have, we'd love to do it. We haven't got the money. So Ben Elton is doing a stand-up comedy tour at the moment, throughout Britain and Australia, New Zealand, and other countries in Europe as well.
Yeah.
Uh, and why is he doing a stand-up comedy tour? Well, partly because he's not sitting writing another series of Upstart Crow or doing a series of Friday or Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's gone. And of course, I mean, I don't claim to be an expert in any way. So there are millions of people who could speak more with a better informed um,
Yeah. Sure.
viewpoint than me. But even from what I've noticed, just being a person trying to survive in the entertainment business, is that the streamers have now taken precedence. So the money is, the people with the money are Netflix and all the other ones.
Yeah.
Um, and so, for example, when ITV in the UK they did that drama series about the post office scandal,
Hmm.
which I didn't see because I hardly watch anything because I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
But that was very, very successful. But I think they just about broke even on that because they can't sell it to one of the streamers because it's about the British Post Office and British postmasters being sent to British prisons.
Yeah.
Well, someone in Germany or America or China, they're not actually that engaged by that issue.
No.
So it was a sort of an Anglo-centric series. So the things that are sellable are
Mm.
the things, I suppose, like The Last Kingdom or something, where it has a worldwide appeal.
Yeah.
And so if a British TV company wants to make a successful program, the money is going to be in something that they can put on the streamers, like The Crown, for example.
Yeah.
The BBC made originally, and then I think it went over to Netflix, didn't it? But yeah,
Yeah.
all over the world are interested in watching about the royal family.
Yeah.
Um, they're interested in our dysfunctional royal family, in our dysfunctional post office.
Yeah, I've heard as well from other people that things like rehearsal times and that sort of thing as well. If you are working on let's say a sitcom or a TV show,
Hmm.
that there's no longer money to do rehearsals and things like that now. Did you find that yourself or?
Well, yeah, in my limited experience of it, I mean, haven't done enough screen acting,
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, I did. I was in both series of Al Murray's sitcom Time Gentlemen Please,
Hmm.
which was on Sky. And I think they would take a week per episode to do that. So
Hmm.
it wasn't a hurried situation when you did the rehearsing before the shoot day. Um, but I have noticed that often if I am doing some filming, you don't even rehearse. They set the shot up
Hmm.
and then they just roll the cameras and say go for it because they're hoping that they might get it in the first take.
Yeah. Okay. So you're doing some stuff for Jim Davidson, aren't you, on his streaming service pay-per-view?
Who? What? Well, that's the American Dave Thompson who was in all those things you just talked about. Yeah, I did. I did it on Wednesday night. I
Hmm.
did. I was asked to do Jim Davis, and he's got this. It's a subscription channel, which
Yeah.
apparently I think now you can get in cable or satellite. I think you can choose it. But it's called Ustream TV, and I think it's Jim Davidson who can't get on the big, BBC. He can't get his prime time Saturday night um, mainstream TV slot like Jim's Big Break and stuff like he used to have. Not that I ever watched them, but he's now got his own channel. He's obviously said, right, if
Yeah.
they won't put me on, then I'll start my own TV station. Well, I take my hat off to him for doing that. He's in his 70s.
Hmm.
Um, and it's actually in an industrial unit. So you drive onto this industrial estate in Fareham near Portsmouth. And there's all these various factories, or tech companies. And then you drive up and it's Ustream TV and you park next door to Jim's, beautiful white Mercedes. And the first one I did was a thing he had called Sunday Night Live, where it's sitting on a couch. And I was interviewed by Miles Crawford, who does a lot of work for Jim. He actually booked me for it as well.
Hmm.
And Jim Davidson has there are accusations of racism and what have you. Obviously, I think he's not, I don't think he's racist now, but back in the time, I think yes, he did do stuff that was racist. Someone made a point to me. They said, that there could have been kids bullied at school back in the early 70s because of what they saw Jim Davidson performing on, either in theatres or on TV. And maybe they've got a point, but I never watched it. I didn't never saw it myself. But I was too busy watching Dad's Army. But anyway, I've lost my thread now. Yeah, so Miles Crawford is black,
Right.
so I was booked for both appearances. I was booked by a black man, and Miles Crawford interviewed me on the couch. Jim was watching, and we did that, and he's good with the money. There's cash there. When I got there, it was done on a Sunday morning. He puts you up in a hotel the night before. He cooked me breakfast in the kitchen.
Oh.
I'd never met Jim Davidson before, but he was a really nice bloke. And I
Hmm.
judge people not on their declared politics, but on the way they treat people on an interpersonal level. That's
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
personal politics. That's how I judge people.
Yeah.
I've known people who are icons of right on left wing liberalism, and they are tyrants.
Yeah.
You talk to them, the way they deal with you, they don't entertain any other opinion than theirs. They are right. They're more like Stalin than a right on left wing person. So
Yeah.
I've I've found those, to be not particularly desirable people to deal with on an interpersonal level. And also other things, they've also done other things which are really all about them and their career. And Jim Davidson, my experience of him, he was a very nice bloke and he was, humble enough to cook me breakfast and stuff.
Right.
When we went, so then I was asked to do this other one, which is doing stand-up comedy. And I went there on Wednesday, but Jim Davidson wasn't there. He was too busy. He was somewhere else. Um, so I didn't deal with him. But yeah, it was okay. I mean, it was basically the money wasn't really that good. So even though it was cash on the night, I didn't really want to burn off my best comedy club material. But at the same time, I wanted to give value for money and do my best. So I tried to get a medium between the two. Um, and I also, because Jim Davidson, he's got a big motor yacht.
All
And
right.
um, and in the beginning of my bit, I said, people accuse Jim Davidson of being racist, but in my experience, he's not racist because he took me to France on his big motor yacht.
Hmm.
And when we went to Calais, he had loads and loads of black friends all getting on the yacht, and he brought them back to Britain, and he was so popular with them that they were giving him bundles of cash.
Oh, wow.
So and I asked the people, I said, would Jim Davidson mind me doing that? And they said, no, I think you'd find that funny. Next, I was implying that he was a people smuggler, because obviously, from the very little I know, Jim Davidson doesn't, approve of people smugglers or, the
Yeah.
unlimited immigration, apparently. So that was my little joke anyway, and obviously that filled 30 seconds that I wasn't doing my best comedy club material. Anyway, the studio audience laughed at it, so hopefully that's all right.
Right. I remember you told me that story. I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but about the show where you had to go to Brighton on the train. Do you remember that
Oh
one?
yes, well that was I'm trying to remember, is it called Food Unwrapped?
That rings a bell.
Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
it, but this is a few years ago now. This is probably, I don't know, about 7 or 8 years ago. But This
Yeah.
is the way it's gone. I mean, I heard because when I started out, an extra or a walk-on would
Mm.
get paid more money than often a featured actor gets paid now.
Right.
Um, Market forces. And I heard that TV companies were now not even paying extras. They were just getting members of the public and saying, "Here's £10 cash. Will you go and stand in the crowd behind this famous actor?"
Mm.
And apparently, you get what you pay for. Apparently, what would happen was the people would get bored after two takes and drift off, and then they'd lose the continuity of the shot because the right people weren't there. Well, if you're
Mm.
paying a member of the public a tenner, what do you expect?
Yeah.
And in sort of keeping with this, the way things have gone, this Food Unwrapped, they were doing a sugar special. Never watched,
Right.
but it was about sugar, all about sugar. And
Right.
they asked two other people, sort of comedians who live in Brighton and me, to go and sit in this little studio in Brighton. It wasn't even a soundstage, so you had to wait for lorries to go past and stuff, when you're doing the recording, so that the sound wouldn't interfere. And we just basically had to try various foods, sugary foods, and the three of us, and that's what we were doing. But they said we can't afford to pay you, but we'll pay you train fare. And I live
Right.
in Shoreham by Sea, which is about 15 minutes by train from Brighton. So
Right.
they said we'll pay you train fare. And of course, at the time, what I wanted to say was, well, if you want to use my skill and professionalism and talent, if I have any of those, then you should pay because,
Mm.
I'm not an amateur, I'm a professional. But I didn't. I said, yeah, I'll do it for the train because I thought, well, at least I'll get my face on telly, because
Mm.
that's the thing. We're all trying to become a face where people recognize your face. Then you've got
Mm.
a bit leverage, you can actually start negotiating some money if you've got some sort of cachet.
Mm.
So to get my face on the telly, I thought, yeah, okay, I'll go and I'll do it for free. And then the next day, the person phoned up from the company and they said, "We're really sorry, but there's a shot we forgot to do. Could you come back and again wearing the same clothes that you wore yesterday so that we can shoot the shot that we forgot to do?"
Mm.
And I said, and they said, "Oh, we'll pay for we'll refund your train fare again." And I said, well, I can't go into the supermarket and buy food for my children with a refunded train ticket.
Mm. Yeah.
If you want my time and my, ability, you need to pay me.
Mm.
And hoping that they might say, all right, then, 50 quid. And they said, oh, okay, all right, then, no problem. They didn't have the money. They didn't have the money to pay. But,
Right.
the thing is that person on the phone would be being paid.
Mm.
People are being paid a salary to get people to work for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way it's gone. That's how things are. And a lot of it's to do with the internet, because now it's all diluted. People, and it's not just the internet, computer games, people
Mm.
are doing other things with their time. They're not sitting down and watching one of the four available stations on the telly. And that's
Yeah. What have you got lined up? Have you got anything coming up in the near future?
tonight I'm performing stand-up comedy in a function room above a pub in Brighton.
Oh, right.
Last night I was at Salisbury Arts Centre. I'm What else am I doing? I'm basically doing stand-up comedy in various places, which is a sort of bread and butter work in the absence of screen acting work. I'm doing a tour of Croatia, which I'm looking forward to,
Mhm.
which means I'll drive from Budapest to Croatia and drive around performing in Croatia. I'd much rather do that than drive up and down the M1 or the M6
Mm.
and perform in Britain. So yeah, basically sort of one night stand-up gigs, a little stand-up comedy tour of Croatia. Every August, I compare the comedy stage at the Sziget Festival in Hungary, which
Right.
is apparently the second biggest music festival in Europe after Glastonbury. So sort of think dust instead of mud. Um, and there's a guy called Joe Bohr who's a very talented comedian, but also a filmmaker, and
Mm.
he's made a documentary about me,
Oh.
and he's pitching it around, trying to flog it to whoever's stupid enough to buy it. But I don't think I would make much money out of it if it did get sold. But it might, get my face on the screen because that's the trouble. When you've the Tinky Winky costume is a costume. It's a mask,
Yeah.
and the
Mm,
mask is famous, not me. And
yeah.
that's the curse of doing that sort of work is that it doesn't actually make your face recognizable.
Did you ever get any Teletubby dolls for your own children, just out of interest?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I got them certainly got one for one of them. I'm not sure whether I got one for both. I've got two girls,
Mm.
but certainly one of them I did. Um, and I had to pay for it. They do. There are fakes in Vietnam. People have sent me photographs of these sort of fake Tinky Winky dolls in Vietnam, which are a very rough approximation of the shape and colour. They're so cheap. But I think that people collect them actually. But someone told me I was doing a stand-up comedy tour of Holland and Belgium a couple of months ago,
Hmm.
and I was contacted on social media by a Teletubby fan, a young Dutch Teletubby fan, a 22-year-old girl, and she said that she didn't like crowds of people, so she didn't want to come to a stand-up gig, but she wanted to meet me and she wanted to do a selfie with me and get me to sign a DVD. And so she actually travelled the whole length of Holland.
Wow.
Admittedly, that's not a huge distance, but she travelled the whole length of Holland to come and see me in my hotel. I met her in the foyer,
Hmm.
and then all the way home again, just to meet me and talk to me. And
Wow.
she said that the Netflix, because they've done a reboot of the Teletubbies on Netflix,
Yeah.
and she said that that has footage of the original series on it.
Ah.
So I don't know, but if that's true, then I should really, when I get the time, I should try and maybe see whether I should get paid a bit of money for that.
Well, yeah, if you're in it, yeah.
Yeah, but I think if it's, I don't know, because the thing is, when we made it, it was before streaming was, invented, so the contract didn't cover it.
Right.
So that's the trouble. But
Yeah.
sometimes these things, they just don't pay you. If they can get away with not paying you, they don't pay you.
Yeah.
And you have to actually chase it up. I recently got paid a load of money for writing stuff that I'd done and also for Time Gentlemen Please. Um, and that was where, Avalon Television were honest enough to say that I was due this money for the writing I'd done on the sketch show
Uh-huh.
and and for the appearing in Al Murray's sitcom, Time Gentlemen Please. And I got a nice juicy amount of money for it. But
Oh,
if
cool.
they hadn't told me, I would never have known.
Hmm.
And there are all sorts of things like that where, people should maybe have sent you money, but they didn't because
Yeah.
that's the way the film industry works is if people don't ask for it, then don't tell them you owe it, you owe
Yeah.
it, and they get away with it.
You've written a book as well, haven't you, Dave?
I did. I think it's the best thing I ever did. I
Hmm.
wrote a novel about a stand-up comedian who gets a part wearing a blue furry costume in a world-famous cult TV show and
Uh-huh.
then gets fired. And it's called The Sex Life of a Comedian. And it's a mythologization of my life. And it has huge amounts of sex and drug taking in it.
Right.
But if you take those scenes out, there is still a good thriller with a beginning, middle, and an end.
Right.
And it has some things which are true and have really happened to me, or things I've really done, and
Hmm.
lots of things which aren't true and I haven't done and haven't happened to me. And it's all mashed up so that you can't tell. And it sort of also tells the story very, very sort of broadly of my doing the Teletubbies. But it's so deeply disguised that Ragdoll have never sued me. Ragdoll, the company that made the Teletubbies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's the best thing I ever did. And it was going to be published by a proper publisher, but then they're very good to be honest. And we fell out. So I self-published, but I couldn't find I had a definite idea of the cover illustration that I wanted, and I
Hmm.
couldn't find anyone who did anything approaching it. So in the end, I just published it, self-published it, on Amazon and Lulu.com. And it looks like a physics textbook. It's just like a red background with black writing on it. and forgotten the name, Endorsements by Ben Elton and Harry Hill on the front cover. And I think it never, no, then children happened, and that was it. It was like, novel writing career over, or put on hold for a long time.
Hmm.
And so I've never given it a proper launch. And if I had the time, I would like to firstly get a decent cover illustration and sort of so it's got a good picture on the front. And I'd like to give it a launch and actually try and sell it. But because I'm divorced with two daughters. I'm sort of, just chasing money all the time to just keep pumping money
Yeah, I
to
know what you
Budapest.
mean.
But also, it's quite funny because I wrote it in, I think it was, I think it was 2004. And in that time, that's 20 years ago, isn't it? So
Hmm.
in that time, the world has changed and things are very different. And now, of course, we've got people on in the media being historically can, being cancelled for historical things that they said 20 years ago. And I think that if that book were to catch the attention of the wrong people, what little career I have could get cancelled. But I stand by it. I stand by it.
Yeah.
And I when I wrote it, I deliberately wrote what was true to me and what I wanted to write,
Hmm.
not what I didn't self-censor. I didn't self-censor. And if you look at the books, The Country Girls by Edna O'Brien, when she wrote that novel and it came out, um, apparently people were burning it, although since then people have said that they said they were burning it, but they didn't. But Catholic priests, well, I think a Catholic priest claimed he'd burned it. But basically, Edna O'Brien was pilloried and attacked vehemently by the Irish establishment for writing that book because it didn't fit in with the Irish establishment's idea of how young women should behave and what a woman should write.
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
Country Girls, Lady Chatterley's Lover, oh yeah, the Country Girls was banned in Ireland. Lady Chatterley's Lover, banned in Britain by the censor, by D.H. Lawrence. And there are other examples where things, when they come out, they are there's massive objection and the writer is persecuted. But
Hmm.
those books then go on to have a much longer life and they become classics and
Hmm.
revered. Whereas the successful books that were approved of at the time are out of print and forgotten about decades ago. So
Yeah.
I deliberately wrote a book. I wasn't afraid. I just wrote what was true to me to write as an
Right.
artist, right? So if someone started attacking me about it now, I would just basically say, if you want to be offended, but I'm not, I don't take it back.
Right. Brilliant.
Because I refuse to virtue signal. I'm not
Yeah.
going to stones. I mean, it's a classic thing. I'm not religious, but Jesus said when they were going to stone that woman to death, and Jesus went and quietly said, "He who is not without sin, sorry, who he who is without sin, let them cast the first stone." And everyone dropped their stone and walked off. And my Aikido master, who I've been studying under for many years, he says that when you point the finger, you've got four fingers pointing at yourself.
Hmm. Do you think the Jesus thing, do you think that was the first ever tough casting session?
That's a wordplay joke
It
there.
is, yeah.
Well, you could do something like that. I went to a casting in Iran. I felt guilty about killing the woman, but peer pressure and all that.
Um, well, thanks again, Dave. It's been absolutely amazing. It's always a pleasure, mate.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you, Sean.
Yeah, and thanks again. I'll talk to you soon. You take care, mate.
Okay. Thanks, Sean. Cheers.